Hi, so I am Kimberly, and I create content on this channel to share my own experiences of building my self confidence and self belief, and to provide advice to other women on how they can do the same. I also want to inspire women to embrace their leadership potential by walking in their self confidence. And so, if these are topics that appeal to you, subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure that you share the content with other like minded people. And so today I wanted to come on and introduce myself and talk about why I talk about the importance of self belief and self confidence for women. And so I want to go over like my background, my education, an area that was a major failure for me, where it led, and so how I started talking about this topic, what it has to do with everything that I share about self confidence and voice. And so, yeah, like I said, my name is Kimberly, and a lot of my background included having an MBA. I have a master's in divinity. I am currently working on a PhD in women's spirituality and social justice. But how I got there is a whole different story. And so, um, where I'll start my story this time is 2012. In 2012, I was fired twice, not once, but twice in the same year, right? I was working for the first company, and I always felt like I could be terminated at any moment because of the policies and procedures and how we had to do our job. But when I was terminated, I felt like a failure. The way I was raised was definitely go to college, get a job, be successful. And at the time, I had already served in the military, and I had already gone through and gotten both my master's degree, so my MBA, and of course my bachelor's before that. And so I got fired in 2012. I was 2 years freshly married. I was devastated. I felt ashamed. I had people asking me when I was going to get a job or when I was going to get my next job. And of course, I had my own internal fears as well, right? And so that led me to scramble and find another job. I will pause right here to say I was not feeling like I should find another job. I was actually feeling a pull to a different path, but I didn't go initially with what I was feeling on that pull. So, of course, like most people would have done, right? I got another job and quickly. And this other job was ideal to me because I could work from home. But it was a hard job. It was a tough spin up because it was an industry I didn't know anything about. I was brand new to it. And although I have the skills necessary to spin up on a job, so I had completed my MBA, I had Excel skills, I had office skills, I had all of the skills needed, the job was still very much overwhelming. And I kept feeling a pull. I felt this pull to a different path that I continued to ignore. And so I stayed on that second job a few months, and then I was fired. And it was so interesting because the way that I was fired, it was one of the most caring firings I had ever had. The first one was an organization. It was, you didn't meet the mark, you're gone. This wasn't quite like this. This was a small business, and this was someone that I was familiar with. And so she was like, we got to meet, we got to talk. We sat down. She was like, oh, I got to tell you something that's hard. I said, I know you have to fire me. I already know. And so, yeah, I ended up getting fired again about 6 months after I was fired the first time. And on that next firing, the second time, I got on my different path. And at that time in my life, it was me going to ministry leadership school, which I pursued through the church I was a part of. And while I was in that program, I also ended up getting a bachelor's in Christian leadership. And so I completed both the ministry leadership program and the bachelor's. And I did this full time. So I did not work outside of the work I did in my home, which we all understand now is labor. But at the time, I wasn't thinking about it as that. I was just thinking about it as caring for my home. However, caring for a home is a job, right? Let me stress that, because often for women, there's a societal tug of war about this. But make no mistake about it, caring for a home is a job. It's a full-time job, right? You really actually never get any time off from it. And so, yeah, that was a lot of my journey. Now, what I didn't share was my background, my personal background as an adoptee. Also, during this time in my life, I was fired twice. I started my ministry and leadership journey, and I started on that degree. And I also ended up searching for my biological family, my birth family, right? As an adoptee, I didn't know them. And so this time, looking back, was appointed for me to go on that journey, right? But in that moment, it's hard to understand what you need. At least it was for me. And so also during this period where I wasn't working outside of the home full time and I was a full time student, I pursued and reconnected with my birth family, which had been a lifelong dream of mine and which had been something that I always knew I would do. Now, my father, who adopted and raised me, always gave me the advice that when I went to search for my birth family, I needed to make sure that I was in my own life and secure in that. And so, honestly, at the time, I didn't feel secure because I was 2 years into a marriage. I felt like, oh, I need to scramble and get a job. But looking back, I was in my life and I was very secure. It was a great time for me to embark on this search because, of course, with this search came me having to deal with and face a lot of emotions that I had around being relinquished at birth, around growing up an adoptee, which a lot of it tied back into identification issues. I had all of these things that came up for me that I had to walk through as I faced this. And it was something I wanted to do. Of course, I thought I would always do it, but honestly, when is the perfect time, right? When can you plan something so upending, something so major? And so I do realize, like I said, now it was great timing. And it did take me some years to start walking through and unraveling a lot of the pieces. For me as an adoptee, when I connected to my family, it was I was well received. This was my birth mother's family. I was well received. I was welcomed in, but there are other stories, and it does not always happen like that. And so, of course, embarking on this journey meant I had to brace myself, right, for what was to come. In this journey, I ended up understanding something about my voice. Now, I grew up and I was always called outspoken. Honestly, I always got like marks for behavior with talking too much, talks too much, right? I still talk too much actually on a lot of occasions, but when I was a child, when I was a teenager, even a young adult, it was a lot more in depth talking too much. And so when I went on this journey to reconnect with my biological family, I also wanted to start blogging. And I hit a snag. I cannot explain this fully, but it was like I could not get the words out. I was like literally felt like lump in my throat, choking on my words, and I became fearful of sharing my personal story, my journey. I mean, I just became fearful. This on the outside for me doesn't make sense, right? Because I'm outspoken, talks too much, always talking, talk, talk, talk. And yet, when it was time for me to talk about the most momentous thing that had ever happened to me, I found myself choked up and unable to do so, which led me on my next journey in unlocking and uncovering my voice. Now, for me as an adoptee, reconnecting to my biological family, my birth family, my family of origin, as some calls it, also came with it an understanding of certain personality traits and proclivities. For me, as I unearthed my birth mother, her family, and I started digging into that, I saw a lot of similarities between myself, my biological mother, things that I struggled with, things that they told me she struggled with, because when I reconnected with her family, she had already passed away, so I did not get to meet my birth mother. So everything that I've had to learn about my biological mom had to come through her sisters, had to come through my sisters, my brother, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my family. And so that was also a part of the journey for me. And so when I tried to start blogging, I was blocked. So now I'm going on another journey to uncover, unblock my voice, figure out what is choking me up, right? And so yeah, this was hard for me, but this was necessary, because I could sense for myself that if I did not overcome whatever was trying to attempt to block my voice, my freedom of expression, I was not going to be successful. And so how that connects to now is now I coach women, right? I'm coaching women about self-belief, about ultimately speaking up. But if I hadn't cultivated speaking up, self-belief, self-confidence, and if it's not something that I'm not ongoingly working on, I cannot help others. To be able to help others, you have to be authentic, relatable. But I also have had to understand, to help others, I've had to overcome an aspect of whatever it is that I'm trying to help them with. And so this is how I got here. It was walking that journey out. It was uncovering those hard areas. And again, my story is my story, but your story is yours. And it doesn't have to be um, as detrimental as something as serious as what I named. It could block your voice. It could be something that happened to you in the third or fourth grade where a teacher just said, "Hey, be quiet, you talk too much." And you could have over internalized it. You could have taken that as a small child and just, oh my gosh, I talk too much, and just started not talking. Research about young women shows that we start questioning, losing our voices, and start shrinking back as young as the age of 9. And so it could be that you raised your hand in class one day and you weren't called on, and your teacher may not have meant any harm, but you could have internalized this, and now you go forward in school, you don't raise your hand as much, right? And so then that became, you just don't speak up as much. And so there are a myriad of ways, right, in which your self-belief can be attacked, your self-confidence, your voice can be silenced. But ultimately it's up to us to overcome whatever that is and how that looks for us. And so, thank you. My name is Kimberly. Again, I like to create content that is about my own experience of building my self confidence and my self belief, so I can provide advice to other women and inspire them to walk in their own leadership, to walk in their own self confidence. And so, this is part one, and I will continue to delve deeper into my story and continue sharing from my own journey.